Welcome to the April the 2nd, 2002 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city and some of the important people that have made history and some that are even continuing to make history this very day. This is our history tape number 453, and we are very honored today. We have His Honor on the dais today, the Honorable Ray Allen, State Representative, District 106.
Well, Ruthie, thank you for inviting me to be on television with you.
Yes, we're so glad to have you. And we're so glad that you represent a great deal of Grand Prairie. And the fact that you live in Grand Prairie, Texas is also a salute and an honor to the city of Grand Prairie, Texas. And we'd just like for you to look out into your camera and tell us about the real Ray Allen, a little bit about how long you have been in the Grand Prairie area and what brought you here, and how long you've been a Texan. I think that is such an exciting thing.
Sure.
All right.
Well, I'll begin by saying that I'm a sixth generation native Texan. I've forgotten how you say the greats, but great, and then some.
Yes.
Grandmother was born in Tarrant County, Texas in 1851.
Oh, man.
Her father came during the time of the Republic, and just a wonderful privilege. I've got to tell you that other than family and my own church, having the opportunity to be the state representative here in Grand Prairie is the greatest blessing of my life. I wake up every morning excited about what I can do to serve my community and my state, and from time to time have the opportunity to make a small difference, either in passing laws that I think will help protect the public, or laws that will make the law-abiding public have a better quality of life. And so it's just a tremendous privilege to be given a place from which you can exercise a little bit of service and occasionally a little authority, or make certain that the government's power is used in the right way, in a good way, in a way that serves the public's needs.
It's very exciting to me that before you became a big honcho at the state government, you worked here in Grand Prairie, Texas, giving your community service through several arenas. I'd like for you to mention those so that everyone will know.
Sure.
You just all didn't come out of the blue all of a sudden and become a state representative.
Well, in some respects, I almost did, because I hadn't lived in Grand Prairie a long time before I became a state representative. But my wife and I, my wife was from Granbury.
And that's Debbie.
Yes, Debbie, my wife Debbie. And we tried to do public service through nonprofit organizations for a number of years. I spent a little bit of time in Washington, D.C. with one of those nonprofit organizations. Finally, we came to the conclusion back in the middle of the 1980s that what we thought was wrong with America could not be fixed from Washington, D.C. So we began to think about how we might come back to our roots, to north central Texas, and find a more effective way of changing America. I decided that politics was interesting, and I wanted to be involved somehow politically on a local level. I think that if we hope that Washington will solve all of our problems, we're hoping in vain.
Yes.
I think that we do have to rebuild our country, its moral foundation, and I think we do that in our own communities and in our own neighborhoods. And so ultimately, that's what attracted me to run for the state legislature. People ask me from time to time if I'm interested in running for Congress or some other higher office, and the answer is just flat out no. I'm not one bit interested in being a congressman.
You're really into Texas.
I like being a state representative.
Yes.
And so I'm just thrilled and gratified that the folks from Grand Prairie have returned me now to this same seat. I've now been elected 5 different times. And
you're a Republican.
I'm a Republican, the first Republican ever to serve our district since statehood. And quite surprisingly, I am unopposed in this election, so you won't have to give equal time to my opponent or anything else.
I knew that.
I don't have an opponent in the primary, didn't have, and I don't have an opponent in the general election. And so I'm looking forward to another 2 years of serving House District 106 and see what kind of good things we can do. And if the folks will stay in communication with me, you can help me from doing bad things as well.
Yes.
Occasionally issues come up where folks like me have no clue what is the right thing to do, and we depend on our local neighbors and friends and community leaders to inform us about issues and how a bill that is before the legislature will impact you and your life and your family and your small business. And it's my pleasure to then take that instruction and get involved and see if we can make a difference.
Do you think your experience that you received as the chairman of what was then the CHIC Commission,
Yes.
Community and Home Improvement Commission, and helping us to clean up, beautify, and do other things, gave you an insight maybe to Grand Prairie itself?
Absolutely, and I wanted to say I was figuring out how can I work this into the things I want to say. I just would like to say to the folks in Grand Prairie, if you don't personally know Ruthie Jackson, you have missed Grand Prairie's biggest asset. I have been one of your greatest and loyal fans since the first moment I met you. I saw that you cared about our community, you cared about our people, you cared about the values that made Grand Prairie and Texas a great place, and I wanted to be a part of that. That's ultimately one of the principal reasons why I wanted to get involved in boards and commissions in the city of Grand Prairie. And I will tell you that the week I arrived in Grand Prairie, the very first week, I bought a newspaper, saw that there were boards and commissions that, that were being appointed, and I sent in a resume and volunteered to serve on a board, and through some angel on the city council, have no idea who, I got appointed to serve on the CHIC Commission, the Community Home Improvement Commission, which you founded as a part of Keep Texas Beautiful. And I guess after a couple of years of service on the commission, I was selected as the chairman and served 2 years as chairman of CHIC. Way back when we started Help Paint a Dream, where we painted the homes of people, and we did Adopt a Street programs and other things that are still ongoing in the community.
You're at the grassroots of Grand Prairie now when you mention all of those good things.
Well, those were all exciting days to me. My interest in environmental issues was really kindled while I was in CHIC, because we had some problems with dumping.
Yes.
We're still wrestling with those
Yes, we are.
problems, gaining a little bit of ground with some new technology and some well-placed cameras out there to catch the dumpers, and I'm pleased to see that that's happening. But I served for 4 years on the Environmental Regulations Committee of the Texas House of Representatives, and for 2 years as the vice chair of that committee. Largely because of the experience I gained right here in Grand Prairie in trying to deal with environmental issues.
Well, one of the real reasons that we just had to have you on the show today, about 5 years ago, I had the delicious assignment from the mayor to work on a very special committee here in Grand Prairie, and it's the West Fork of the Trinity Trails and byways along the West Fork, which goes all the way into Fort Worth, through Arlington, and on through Grand Prairie into Irving, and with no money. And they did put a small amount of money into the budget 1 year. Then the year after that, they called for a study between Irving and Grand Prairie and put me behind another year. No money that year because they spent it all on the study. And following that, I thought, well, I will, before I die and go to heaven, I will never see the West Fork of the Trinity Trails even begun. And we applied for grants for 2 or 3 years through the COG, which is the Council of Governments, and through the Highway Department, which is we call TxDOT lovingly. And this year, when we sent in a grant request, it came back with zilch. And I still didn't have any money because I'd given up $300,000 that they had put in the budget for me to the Fish Creek Preserve, which is a Dallas County beautification thing. Reluctantly, I gave that up, but I said, we're going to get out and hustle. When we got a zero again this year, I was a little bit heartsick, but didn't give up. So 2 members of the Parks Department and I went to Austin and appeared before 2 members of the Highway Commission. And these 2 members looked at us with awe, I'm sure, that we would even come down and ask for money for some of such as that when they had requests that were, well, really magnificent request, and I just really hated that we had gone down, and we came back, and then we contacted Ray Allen, a very special young man that represents our district. And I wish you would tell us the story. After we went there and got a 0 on what we were going for, tell us what a state representative does or has to do to help us get a grant, and I'd like for you to tell us the amount of the grant. Just give us a little story.
Well,
that needs to be on history.
Let me say that Citizen City of Grand Prairie, led by you, worked for 3 different funding cycles trying to get a state grant. It's called from the Texas Department, Texas Highway Department's STEP fund. This is actually federal money that is given back to the states for the purpose of funding non-highway transportation projects.
Environmental things.
And quality of life. And one of the primary things for which they grant funds is hike and bike trails that help relieve pedestrian traffic from the roadways and things of that nature. So after you folks contacted me and helped educate me about what STEP funds were and how they're used, I made some personal contacts with each member of the TxDOT Commission, Commissioner of Transportation, and the other 2 governor's appointees. And I thought back in November, after your rejection, I think was in the spring.
Yes.
I thought after our personal communications in November that we would certainly be in the finalists. And so I just wrote a nice, polite letter encouraging them to consider our plea, and I was quite surprised then when they announced their grants that were made late in the fall, and Grand Prairie was not among them. And
Right.
so at that point, we redoubled our efforts and continued writing letters and talking to the different folks involved, both in the staff and on the Texas Department of Transportation Board. And I'm pleased to say that at their supplemental grant meeting that was held out in Lufkin.
You took time to go to Lufkin.
Yes, I did. I drove, in fact, I left Austin at about 3:30 in the morning to drive to Lufkin to make sure I was there when they all arrived so I could talk to them individually before we had the meeting. But the bottom line is that the Texas Department of Transportation made a grant to the city of Grand Prairie for the Trinity hike and bike trails in the amount of $3 million, which should help us to complete at least phase 1 in and around Lone Star Park and the Trinity River West Fork there. And so I was very pleased, and I would it would be wrong of me not to personally express my gratitude to the members of the TxDOT, Texas Transportation Commission, to Chairman Johnson and my former colleague Rick Williamson and our other commissioner. They made the final decision, and they made a good decision, I think. This is a quality project. It's something that should have been funded in the past, but we're grateful for their assistance now, and we'll certainly be looking forward to them coming back to the table and helping us complete this project. That's what the funds are for, and Grand Prairie had never received any of these funds, though numerous other communities in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex had, and I guess they just thought it was our turn.
It was timely, wasn't it?
It was very timely.
I thought that you would be very happy to know that I asked the city manager, since we received the $3 million, we match it with a $1 million from
Right.
the city of Grand Prairie, Texas. And they have promised me the $1 million without my having to get out and hold out a cup on the streets to be able to do this. And so I know that we're just very happy that we'll be, and we have named ours the Lone Star Trail.
Yes.
So that's going to be exciting. But even besides that, because you have been so wonderful in doing that, I wanted you to know that I made a special request to the Parks Department, to Mr. Mark Einatten, who is the Director of Parks and Recreation and all the good things, and he's over this trail situation. And I said, do you think you would be willing to consider something really special for Ray Allen? we've never named Arbor Day ceremonies in honor of anyone, even though people have been arborists and tree planters and tree huggers in Grand Prairie, Texas all of these years. And so they have given us the green light, and we're on April the 26th, we're going to be honoring you by honoring Arbor Day, Ray Allen's Arbor Day in Grand Prairie, Texas.
Well,
we're going
that
to
is
plant something,
kind.
and I have asked a special lady to come just bust in on the set, so to speak. And Susan Henson, who is the horticulturist for the city of Grand Prairie, Texas. Do you have anything to tell him, Susan?
Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
It is our pleasure and our honor to dedicate a tree to you as part of our living memorial forest, and to dedicate our whole Arbor Day celebration to you. And we will be celebrating, and we invite you to come on
Won't miss
April
it.
26th at 11 o'clock at the trailhead at the GPX Park at Lone Star
All
Park.
right.
And we have many exciting activities planned for the day. We will have Charles Brown with the Texas Trail Association come and speak with us. We will have the Arbor Day poster contest display. The Grand Prairie Garden Club will be giving out free trees. We also have Courtney Blevins with the Texas Forestry Service coming to speak with us.
Get the big deal of the day, Mr. Allen.
Man, what a deal.
Yeah.
And just for doing my job.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
But we also would like to ask you, Ms. Jackson, to be our MC as Mother Earth of Grand Prairie, Texas.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so very much for being here with us today and stopping the music and representing Mr. Inatten, who really wanted to be here, but he said he would send his next best ambassador. And what kind of tree are you planting in his honor?
Well, we would like to plant a pecan tree in your honor because it is the state tree. But I have to make sure that everyone that's associated with this is willing to accept it, because you know there will be some pecans, and we're over at a skate park.
That's right.
So we're looking for the exact location, but it will be the state tree, a pecan tree in your honor.
Well.
And your name will be added to the Living Memorial Forest plaque that hangs at the Kirby Creek Nature Center.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you so much.
We
I appreciate
you.
it, Susan. Give my best to Mark, too.
Thank you.
Well, Ruthie, at least it's not a dogwood tree that would attract dogs. You know, I'm just thinking better that than a fire hydrant or something. Do you remember when Chick Commission was
Yes.
involved in Arbor Day when I was chairman? I'm sure we were involved before, but I only remember one occasion where we had a whole bunch of trees, several hundred trees, and people came out to the old golf course there on 14th Street and picked up trees.
Which is now Prairie Lakes.
Yes, Prairie Lakes.
Yes, Prairie Lakes Municipal Golf Course. Okay, now that we're going to also honor you with a proclamation at the city prior to this Arbor Day situation. And even though you can't be there, we know that you're so busy, but tell us what you're doing in Austin, the committees that you're on, but above all, tell us your new district.
Well, I'm still representing House District 106,
Yes.
which traditionally is the district.
But they redrew your lines, didn't they?
Yes, our lines were redrawn, not to my satisfaction, I might say. But I do finally, again, have the bulk of Grand Prairie. There was a time when Irving was a much larger portion of our district than it is in the new drawing. And so I essentially represent everything in the Dallas County portion of Grand Prairie, all the way from the Ellis County line, which is my district line, actually goes right through the middle of Joe Pool Lake. So I represent a number of striped bass,
Yes, you do.
channel catfish, and crappie. They don't vote very well, but they're good, solid constituents. All the way up the creek, taking in essentially most of South Grand Prairie, a portion of the downtown part of Grand Prairie, and the eastern part of Grand Prairie is in House District 104 because of the preponderance of people with Hispanic surnames.
Yes.
That was a requirement of the United States Justice Department, which unfortunately divided the city of Grand Prairie into two legislative districts. And then I have everything in Irving south of the Rock Island Railroad.
Oh,
So it's the southern part of Irving and all of Grand Prairie, and at least now I can tell people who I represent. In several of the past years, you'd actually have to look in a computer to tell. Our neighborhoods were so cut up, particularly on the eastern boundary. That's House District 106, and we're getting ready now to convene a new session after the November elections are held. We will convene in Austin in January for a session of 140 days in which there will be a flurry of legislative activity.
okay. And of this 140 days, do you have any assignments yet, or is that after
No.
the election?
The assignments to committees will follow after the election and will be appointed by the Speaker of the House. It yet remains to be seen who will
Who
be
is
the
that?
Speaker in the next session. A wonderful Democrat from Hale Center up in the Panhandle, Pete Laney, is currently the Speaker and has been during my entire term in the legislature. But it seems likely that there will be more Republican members of the House than Democrats for the first time since statehood after the November election, and that very likely will precipitate a new Speaker's race, because the
see.
Speaker of the House is chosen from among the membership.
I see.
And so I'm expecting that there will be a new Speaker. If I am wrong, I will be the representative in charge of cleaning toilets because I've already pledged to one of the candidates who is not currently Speaker. Your committee assignments are usually based on loyalty to whoever is the Speaker.
Yes.
So it's a very volatile time for all 150 members of the House. If
Yes,
you
it
guess
is.
wrong, you may wind up with bad committee assignments. Pete Laney has been good for Texas. He has been a wonderful Speaker. He's been there for 10 years, and I'm thinking that some of the folks who have come up in leadership, maybe it's time for them to put their nose to the grindstone and their hands to the wheel. And so I'm looking forward to what's going on in the next legislative session. I will say that Speaker Laney in the last session appointed me to serve on the Appropriations Committee and the House Administration Committee, which runs the business of the House of Representatives. And I have now served for 4 terms on the House Corrections Committee, including a stint as vice chair of that committee, and which is due to my interest in criminal justice issues.
Is that your favorite?
Absolutely. I think that government has some very clear obligations. One of the reasons we enter into this contract to have government, why people allow themselves to be governed, is because we expect government to do some things for us that we cannot do individually for ourselves. And one of those things is to manage matters of criminal justice. If our neighbor offends us, we don't go across the street and take matters into our own hands.
Beat him up.
We give our powers over to the government, and we ask the government to use its power to assure that justice occurs. I think it's the most important thing that government does, and that's why I want to be involved in it.
You've fostered or fathered many, many bills in the legislature. Of all that you have presented that have been adopted, what is your favorite? Or the one that you think is the best for Texas, I'll put it that way.
It's hard to boil it down, because actually you don't write one law, at least I haven't. I've written a body of law in 2 different areas that I think are important. The first is in managing prisons and utilizing the productive power of inmates to work. Many people remember when I was just bouncing around Grand Prairie saying, this is what we ought to do, and they thought I was nuts.
Yes.
But we have a program in Texas that is a model for the nation, where inmates work for private sector corporations who have put their factories behind our walls of prison. Inmates are working for those companies, earning money, the same wage they'd be making in the free world, and then the state reaches into their paycheck, takes 80% of it, reimburses taxpayers for the cost of their confinement, reimburses their victims, and sends money home to their children and their families. And the inmates get a small portion of what they've earned, And those people have cut their recidivism rate. The rate at which they return to prison after they're released is less than half of the state's average. So I'm very proud of that exciting program where inmates are actually paying for their prison stay. And the second is the body of law that I've written with other legislators, principally Senator Florence Shapiro, on sex offender registration and notification. We have dramatically improved the public safety in regard to sex offenders in the state of Texas, and a large part of that reason is because we have some of the toughest sex offender registration and notification laws in the country. And if you go back in the historical archives, you'll find the name Ray Allen written at the top of almost all of them.
Yes. In the 2.5 or 2 3/4 minutes that we have left, I'd like for you to look out into your camera and just tell Grand Prairie anything that you would like to.
Grand Prairie, I love you. I really do. Being the state representative in Grand Prairie, in my view, is the best job in the universe. It could pay a little bit better, but then I knew that coming in, so that's not a complaint. To me, there's no more ennobling, no more fulfilling, no more satisfying work than working for the people of Grand Prairie and South Irving, those people who sent me to Austin to work. I'm deeply grateful for that.
Would you thank Debbie too? Please thank Debbie
Oh,
for aiding and
wife,
abetting
yes.
you. She is just wonderful.
My wife is a 3rd grade teacher at Shady Grove Elementary School at Shady Grove Christian Academy, and she sacrifices every single day so that I can do this work, and I'm deeply grateful to my wife and my children, and all the family members and the volunteers and the people who've helped in countless campaigns. But what a wonderful privilege it is to serve such a great city and a city blessed with really wonderful visionary leadership. I'm so proud of Grand Prairie. When I first came into office, people, used to kind of hang their head and explain they were from Grand Prairie, and now the chests are puffed out and the chins are high because of leadership from Ruthie Jackson and Charles England and a dozen other members of the council and the city's boards and commissions. Grand Prairie is a city on the move and a city to be reckoned with. And I'm just grateful to have been here and to have an opportunity to be a small part of that.
I want to thank you for the $3 million.
Sure,
It's
just a million here and a million there, and pretty soon it's real money.
That's going to be wonderful for Grand Prairie, Texas, and it will be certainly due to you and your efforts to help us realize that.
Thank you, Ruth.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.
Okay, thank you.